What's up, guys? Welcome to the MD Journey. My name is Laksh. My job is to help you succeed in med school and in college as a pre-med to do well with less stress. In this video, we're going to talk about a question I had from a reader, which was, how do you manage being a pre-med with extracurriculars? Which ones do I do? How do I know when to add more? When do I know to drop one? We're going to go over all those things. And I'm also going to share at the end of the video extracurriculars that I did and I think were probably the most impactful in my med school application. So stay tuned to the end if you want to hear about that. But let's get to the video. Hit that intro. So extracurriculars and being a pre-med. So there is a right way of doing it and a wrong way. And if I'm making a video about it, that means most of you guys are doing the wrong way. So this is basically what the wrong way is, and that is doing every single organization under the sun that you think will be helpful for you to get into med school or that you see your peers doing. So for example, a lot of you guys are science majors. You may be doing the same organizations as a lot of your classmates just because that seems like the right thing to do. And you do one, you see your classmates keep adding another organization, so you join that one, and eventually you have 30, 40 people doing the same, 3 to 4 organizations. They apply to all the same med schools in the state and nearby states, and they don't really look that much different aside from their grades. And then they're stressed out about whether they'll get into med school. So now let's quickly get into the right way. So the wrong way was basically doing all the organizations and adding more until you're overwhelmed and stressed and concerned on which ones you should keep doing and whether or not they're helpful for you to get into med school. The right way, here's an illustration, is going based off your whys. I talked about this in a previous video, and I'll go ahead and put that card up here. I'll link that in the description of what type of things you need to know before applying to med school, is knowing your why. Why in the world do you want to become a doctor and go to med school, 4 years, residency for another 3 to 7 years? Why do you want to spend so much time doing that? Have a good reason. If you're new to college, you're new to the journey into medicine, that's okay of not having a very solidified reason. You may have an interest. What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say becoming a doctor that interests you or intrigues you? Is it the ability to do research? Is it the ability to take care of patients with chronic conditions, life-threatening terminal illnesses such as cancer? Are those attractive to you? Do you like the altruistic aspect of it? Do you like the leadership aspect of it, being the head of a team and making decisions with other people, but kind of being the final decision maker in the healthcare of that patient? All of these things are different reasons, and everybody has a different combination of different things. So you need to ask yourself, what's that 1 to 2 to 3 whys that I have to go to med school and to become a doctor? Once you define your why or your multiples of whys, choose activities in that realm. So if you decide that I love being altruistic, that's the reason I want to become a doctor, is because I want to help other people, I want to help the underserved population, whatever it may be, go do activities such as community service projects, working at your food bank, your homeless shelter, different things in that realm. Pursue activities based off your whys instead of finding activities and then later on when your application or your interviews come around, coming up with some BS of why each activity was really important to you. It's much easier to sell a story if you can say, why? Activity. And here's another important thing to remember. If you do the same organizations as your peers, which a lot of you guys may be doing, and you get similar grades, there is very little to separate you from the rest of the pack. Imagine yourself when you go into an interview, you are basically competing against the person that's sitting in that chair before you and the one that's going to be sitting after. You have a lot more competition, but just bear with me for a second. If that person in front of you went to your school and did the same organization, the same community service projects, and did them for basically the same reason that you did, which is I joined and then I came up with a reason, and then the person after you did the same thing, you have very little aside from your grades to separate yourself. And that's when the whole experience gets very stressful. But let's say now you choose the right way, which is you pick your whys and then you pick activities in your whys. Now you can sit in that chair and you don't have to worry about the person in front of you or the person after you, because you are just you. You know your reason. You know basically why each of your activities had a purpose in your journey into medicine. So remember the difference between the right way and the wrong way. Most students are doing the wrong way because it seems like it's more important to have a lot of things on your resume than it does to have things that you care about and to have quality. I'd rather go for the student that has quality in their extracurriculars than the student that has 10 different organizations but really doesn't have any ties or passions toward any of them. So the next thing about extracurriculars is just which ones do you do? I'll link in the description to the corresponding blog post of just a list that I made. Obviously, it's not an inclusive list. Everything on that list may not be attractive to you. There may be things that you like that I didn't even consider putting on the list. So it's just a combination, going back to the first idea, come up with your whys and then find stuff on that list, find stuff around your campus that seem interesting, and just go one at a time. You don't have to add 3 clubs at a time just because you feel like you're behind. Add one thing, and as I say in a previous video, grow into your roles instead of adding more roles. So go from secretary to vice president to president versus just being a secretary in 8 different organizations. There's much more value in growth than there is of just adding more quantity. So take a look, again, links in the description to that list if you're interested in just kind of figuring out what other things you can do. It doesn't really matter what your extracurriculars are, as long as you're passionate, you can talk about them. They're more really just there for you to show that you're human. You're not just the 4.0, 3 point, whatever GPA student with the blah, 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 MCAT. Your extracurriculars are just basically a snapshot of you. And so if you actually choose things that you care to do, then it will say much more about you versus if you just do organizations just for the sake of putting them down. And in this last part of the video, we'll talk about when do you know to add more versus when do you know to take away a club or organization that you're doing. So in terms of adding more, the first thing that I think that every college student, every pre-med student should do is to first master their study plan. Now I know it doesn't seem like it has to do much with extracurriculars, but to really become an effective college student, the students that you see that you're really just in awe of because they feel like they get their great grades and they're doing like 101 different things and then they got into med school. You ideally want to become those people aside from doing the 101 things. So this is what you do. Figure out how you study well. Get the grades you want. Start taking out the BS stuff that you do that doesn't really impact your grades. So like if you reread your text all the time, but then you think to yourself, I didn't get any questions on that test right because I reread the text. Take that away and keep doing that until you basically chop your study method and technique into a few hours a week, few hours a day, whatever it may be for you. That way you're only doing what's most effective. Because once your studying is, honed in, you can get those A's and those A pluses in your classes. Now you have more time to add for extracurriculars. A lot of students, again, this is the wrong approach where they'll say, I'll figure out my grades and I'll add some clubs and then I'll ideally figure out some balance. That's usually the wrong way to do it because if your grades aren't where you want them to be, and a lot of students may have issues with this is where your GPA suffers, but you're not going to try to want to get rid of those extracurriculars because in the back of your mind, you're telling yourself that you still need these for med school. So add extracurriculars once you first figure out your study routine. My first semester in college, again, I only did 3 years. So my first semester, so 1 of 6, I didn't do any extracurriculars. I basically took my classes and made sure I knew how to ace my courses. Once I did that, the second semester I added 1 to 2 activities, and then I just kept adding either activity or growing my role within the activities I was already in. And again, at the very end of this video, I'll talk about activities that I did. So use that approach first, define your base, make sure your base is strong, and then go ahead and add activities and quality to your resume. Now, how do you know when you should get rid of an organization? So 1, ask yourself if you took the wrong approach initially, if this is an organization, activity, a community service project that you're doing because of a passion versus you think that it'll be helpful. I'll give you a quick example. When I was in my first year and a half of college, I did what everyone else did and signed up to be a volunteer at the local hospital. We weren't really doing much, but I thought it looked good on your resume to have it. And I was honestly just wasting 3 to 4 hours a week spending my time there. Sure, I was being helpful, but I wasn't getting much out of it. I wasn't really passionate about going to the volunteer experience. It wasn't really one of my whys. So as soon as I did a self-reflection and introspection on that activity, I dropped it. And I had now 3 to 4 hours that either I could use elsewhere or it was free time to manage my stress. But again, kind of look at your activities. Ask yourself if you're doing any activity that you're just not passionate about or is taking too much of your time and is causing strain in other aspects of your life, more importantly, your grades, your relationships, obviously, and other organizations that you are passionate about. If any of those factors are affected, consider either decreasing the time or just cutting ties altogether. I did it. It's completely okay. Make sure at the very end of it that you are stuck with activities, grades, research experiences, community service projects that you're passionate about. you can obviously dedicate your time to, you have time for it. And then it's much easier to sell yourself on an application, on an interview, when everything in the final product is just stuff you care about. So last part of the video, as I promised, I'll go over just extracurriculars I did. My extracurriculars, I honestly believe, is what got me into med school. I had, a fine GPA, and my MCAT was decent. Didn't help me, didn't hurt me. But I do think it's my extracurriculars. It's the reason I'm at the med school that I am today. So one thing that I did is I joined a pre-med organization. I was very small, around 20 to 30 people. That allowed me to build friendships, but also to kind of gain leadership positions. And eventually I got to the point to the end of my college experience where I was the president of this very small organization. And I was able to use, and develop my leadership experiences to grow this organization in terms of size and popularity. And I was able to speak about that experience a lot during my interview. So again, this is where I say grow into your roles instead of adding more roles. I had a leadership position every corresponding semester, but eventually I got to where I had the most impact on the organization. So that's one of them. So the second thing that I did is I did do research at my institution for about 2.5 years, and it was definitely a field I wanted to explore. Not everyone has to do it. I'll make a separate video on this, but I had a great mentor who basically allowed me to have every role possible on a research project, to coming up with idea, to helping up with the writing, to actually conducting the experiments, collecting the data. And he was just great. Tom, if you're watching, thank you so much. And thankfully, all that hard work ended up being resulting in a publication. Now I'm aware that not all college students will be able to end up doing a project that ends up having a publication by the time that they're applying. I was very grateful and very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. And so again, when I first started that research experience, I started with some very minimal basic roles, and I was able to grow my roles and my impact on the project throughout the next several semesters. So it was really helpful on interviews, similar to the first experience, to talk about my growth and my impact on the project. And for institutions and medical schools that are very research heavy, like the one I currently go to, it's very helpful to obviously have a publication, but just having a very involved role into a research project, that speaks very highly of you as well. So another activity that I did is I joined the student government of the College of Natural Sciences where I was at. And again, started as a member, got an activity or got a role, continued to expand until I got closer and closer to the top, having more impact, having more growth. And then I did a lot of different jobs. So I worked as a tutor for the athletic department where I was at. And during my gap year, because I finished college early, I took a gap year where I worked with kids with autism, and I worked one-on-one with them as a behavioral therapist. And so again, another experience that most people before me, after me, didn't have. It was very quality over quantity. I did it for a year, and I was able to talk a lot about it. Basically, I had a lot of volume in a few things, and when my interviews came, you only have 30 minutes, but you can speak a lot about a little versus speaking a little about a lot. You can obviously tell which med student's likely going to win or which applicant is going to win. So try to put yourself in the right shoes, doing it the right way versus the wrong way. If you guys have any questions about extracurriculars, anything pre-med, I'm putting out video on a weekly basis, and this video was done based off of a recommendation from a reader and a viewer. So go ahead and comment below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Come on, subscribe, please. And I will see you guys in the next video. If you guys have any questions, again, comment below, like, share, subscribe to this video. I will see you guys in the next video. But thank you guys so much for watching. It's been such a blast making these videos. Hopefully they're helpful for you guys. And I will see you guys next week. Take care, y'all.